In the lab right now. Good to see you. John Harris waving your hand. I'm Drew Dougherty, and you make three, the three of us here on this In the Lab, where we talk about Don't You Forget About Me. No, not getting
Oh,
into the Breakfast Club, not getting into Simple Minds. Great band with,
Simple Minds.
yeah, I
Wow.
love Simple Minds.
Yeah, great
Don't you
band.
forget about me. And then what's that other one they had? The big one. Not Don't You Forget About Me is
Mm.
their big one, but there's another one that's awesome. Um, Goodness gracious.
It's funny. I can remember when I hear a song, like, oh yeah, I know that song.
Alive and Kicking. That's what it is.
Oh,
Alive. Yeah.
oh, good.
That's
Yeah,
a
Simple
great one.
Minds.
Yeah.
I found this out the other day. If you're an '80s child like I was, or just interested,
And meanwhile,
it
PSA, everyone under the age of 20 is now tuned out. But
yeah,
anyways, go ahead.
exactly.
Yeah.
But even those that are 20 or under, it's not the Simple Minds. It's not the Talking Heads. It's Simple Minds and it's Talking Heads. I learned that this week when Talking Heads popped up on my son's Amazon Music, and it popped up and it said it's not the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
And Simple Minds is the same way. So
Talking Heads, This Must Be the Place, top 10 song of all time for me. First song I put on when I'm feeding the jukebox
yeah,
at a bar or something.
Talking Heads. Wait, was that burnt? What was the
Burning Down the House, they do that too.
Okay, so my brother-in-law tells a great story. I think you I'm not. It wasn't my brother-in-law, but my brother-in-law had a friend of his that got a little bit inebriated one night, and apparently, a house got set on fire, and his buddy was sitting outside singing Talking Heads song, "Burning Down the House," and yeah,
Original.
woke up the next morning and wondered what had happened to the house. So things can happen. So I always remember that.
No more wondering now. Let's get into Don't You Forget About Me, because
Oh,
I think Vandermeer or you came up with that sort of phrase as
yeah,
far as players who are on the roster, typically younger,
yeah.
who have shown promise, but for whatever reason haven't really broken through to whatever the next level is, whether it's from good to great, from contributor to starter, from really not contributing to contributing. So there's lots of parameters here, but basically someone who's not made a jump. There's a lot of guys who are candidates for that are on the roster right now. And driving in this morning on Wednesday, nice rainy, soggy Wednesday. It's good for the grass.
I think I know
the
where you're going with
trees.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard the guys talking, and we heard Nick Caserio, Executive Vice President, General Manager of the Texans, talking with him. And they brought up a name who was really intriguing to me last year when the Texans drafted him very, very late. Left tackle, Ladarius Henderson. I don't know that he's going to play left tackle for the Texans,
Right.
but he was a guy who played elsewhere for most of his college career and then transferred and started a lot of games for the then national champion Michigan Wolverines. Texans drafted him, never really got a chance to practice because he was injured and had some stuff going on, but I'd see him around the building every once in a while. And I read a fantastic story about him. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's at least 4 or 5 years old, and it was in The Athletic, and it was talking about his time in Waxahachie, Texas, up north of here, which is just south of Dallas. And he's a fascinating kid, fascinating young man. Yep. I shouldn't call him a kid. But he's somebody that Caserio said this morning on the radio, he's transformed his body. So this could be someone that could be in the mix for competing at offensive line, which we all know they've got to play better than they did in 2024. They'll be the first to tell you that. So Ladarius Henderson, someone that I've seen, someone that I've just chit-chatted with in the hallway from time to time, and I'm fascinated to see what he can do in 2025 because you don't have any professional tape on him. Everything you have is from 2023. But he's an intriguing player who was a very important part of that Wolverines team that won it all. And I don't care, man. No matter who you were, if you were on a national title team, let's see what you got. Let's see what you got at the next level. Now, the NFL is littered with names who won national titles and then didn't do anything as pros. It's a different skill set.
Yep.
But knowing who he is and knowing who he could be, I'm intrigued, John. What do you think?
So he started his career at Arizona State
and
then transferred to Michigan. And it was,
but he played a lot.
Yeah, he played a lot
too.
No, he played a lot of football. And so when I saw him at the Senior Bowl, I remember thinking, I don't know. And I don't want to be that guy that looks at a guy. Nope, that guy can't play.
And to be fair, he was a 7th-round pick. So you can say that about a 7th-round pick. You know, you're not being too overly judgmental about a 7th-round pick.
Correct.
You say stuff like that.
But I thought he was really struggling. Mm-hmm. When I found out he had been hurt, it made all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, man, the guy that I watched during the season looked more comfortable than that, like moved better. So when I found out, oh, yeah, he's hurt and he's going to essentially redshirt in 2024, I thought this is the best thing. I almost feel like if you could do that for your 6th and 7th round players in particular, to give them a year to redshirt, to learn the NFL way, to work out hard, rehab whatever injury you've got, and even in a case where he just kind of redshirt a guy, if you could just redshirt him
mm-hmm.
and bring them along, at a little bit slower, maybe they don't practice or maybe they do practice, but you can keep them around. And in some cases, NFL teams will do that with later round picks. They'll put them on a practice squad, and that's kind of the way they do it. But in Ladarius's case, being injured, it was like, okay, essentially it's going to be a redshirt year. Like, okay, get your body right, get rehabbed, so get your body fixed, then get your body right. And that was one of the things that stood out. And if you do that, I wonder too, and we've talked about this, that I think when I wrote him up, I remember thinking tackle guard. And so, and I remember, I want to say when we talked to Nick, they were thinking about him as a guard, like that was going to be his position here. Mm-hmm. So you get kind of a double whammy in a sense that you get to rehab your body, you get to stick around the NFL building, and now you get to transform your body into maybe a little bit more of a guard body.
Yeah.
Or maybe you need a little bit more upper body strength, where you need just overall, core strength and all that to be able to play that position. But I think just hearing Nick talk about him and knowing the work, and look, it's very clear that this building values guys that put in the time, put in the effort, and get in this building. And they do it with the best intentions possible. And I think Ladarius has done that. So the tricky thing is, okay, he hasn't taken a snap. He hasn't put on a helmet since that Senior Bowl. So that Senior Bowl was January of 24.
Right.
So we're going to go all the way to August of 25. So you're talking a year, 7 months.
It's a lot of time.
A little over a year and a half. Yeah. But you haven't, so he's going to have to callous his body to that physicality again. But it's also going to be intriguing. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, too. You said it. If Ladarius doesn't work out, it's a 7th-round pick.
Right.
But if you see something, even if he turns into a backup offensive lineman that you can rely on, that, okay, and Charlie Heck was the same way. And Charlie was a 4th-rounder. Okay, Charlie's got to go in the game because Laramie's hurt or Titus is banged up. Charlie's got to go play. And Charlie would hold his own and do a really good job. And it really wasn't until Charlie hurt his foot where it really kind of slowed down any kind of progress that he was making as this team's swing tackle, a very important position. I think for Ladarius, man, what if all of a sudden Ladarius steps in and you're like, man, he takes over right guard. And I mean,
massive victory.
That's found $50 in your pocket,
Yeah.
And I mean, that is to me what makes it kind of exciting. And I do think of the 5 offensive line positions, and it's funny because I've been thinking this way for a while. When Nick said it about Ladarius Henderson, I'm like, ooh, maybe that's the guy. I've felt like all along there's going to be an upset somewhere on that offensive line that we don't see coming. The Mike Brizell of the group that you don't see coming, and then you're like, whoa, Mike's really good.
Gets the job done.
Gets the job done. And so when he mentioned Ladarius, that kind of popped up. The other name that I think about a lot.
Time out. And it's don't you forget about me. It's not.
Yeah.
We don't have a burning flag that we're throwing in the ground saying this is going to happen.
Right.
It's like, don't forget about this guy. He might do something.
Well, here's another one for you.
And then I have a 3-pack after you get your name.
I got one for you.
Okay.
And you should love hearing this because he is a Pony or a former Pony player. That's Jalen Thomas. And again, Jalen played tackle at SMU, and I felt like guard was his best position, maybe even center at that point. But, he was a guy that I'm trying to remember when he got here, like 8-23 on it, 24. I feel like there were a couple days in training camp where I'm watching him thinking, man, there's something there. He's thick and stout and tough. I think there's something there, and then hurt. And it's like, dang it. Because there was kind of this rash of injuries in 23. I can't remember if he's part of that. I know he was part of it in 24. And I feel like he's a guy that, man, if you worked with him every day, could he be a guy that gave you something on the inside as well? So I feel like that's another guy, Jalen Thomas from SMU, been with the organization for a couple of years now. Don't forget about that guy, because I think he's got a little something as well. So you throw those two guys in the mix, who knows? You start performing with the threes, you do some good things, you get in a preseason game, you have a long stretch in the second half. Now all of a sudden, hey, maybe we should get them some reps with the twos. Get a few more preseason games, and before you know it, man, you're right there on the cusp of one injury away, and then all of a sudden injury happens and you got to step in. And that, who knows if that could happen. I just always think of Mike Brazel in these situations. He's one of my favorite Texans of all time, Biscuit Brazel. He was just such a character, but just a really, really good guard that nobody thought anything about. Everybody, as you said, Drew, forgot about him. And then this guy ends up being a piece of one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line the Texans had. And he was instrumental in that.
You just brought up Jalen Thomas, and he's one of the Jalens on this team. Jalen Petrie, the ones that were drafted, that quartet. There's also Jaden. And when you said that, I thought, oh no, John hasn't been paying attention because we just cut Jalen Thomas a week ago, and I was wrong. As I was looking at my phone, it was a Jaden Peavy, defensive tackle that we saw. So, pardon me, but
things happen so fast and furious.
I was coaching a fifth grade baseball game the other night, and the umpire, he comes over to me like middle of the game during the break, in between innings, and I thought he was going to tell me something about like, hey, watch the box here, or he's like, hey, so what are you guys going to do about all these Jalens? How are you going to figure it out? Well.
And listen, it's Jalen with an I-N, Jalen with an I-N, Jalen with an E-N, Jalen with an O-N.
O-N that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and then you got Jalen, who is no Y, but L-E-N in Jalen Petrie.
I'm an old man, and I forget some things, and that's what just happened. So
I guess you just yell out Jalen and see who responds.
Okay, I got a 3-pack of Don't You Forget About Me.
Okay.
And there's a variety here. So, receiver-wise, Xavier Hutchinson, and John Mechie.
Yep.
Don't you forget about them.
Okay.
Who knows? This is year 3 essentially for both.
Yep.
That's sometimes a good jump. And then a guy who did really well, but maybe is just scratching the surface, Kalen Bullock, safety on the other side.
Yep.
So much attention has been paid to the CJ-GJ addition and the corners and all the great stuff that they did. But let's not forget about that 3-pack there. What does Hutchinson do to leap forward? What does Mechie do to leap forward? Because we're starting to see some flashes from each of the 3. And I could see those guys all taking leaps. Because on another vein, Casario brought up Kamari Lassiter and how his body has changed this offseason. So goodness gracious, what's that mean? But how about that for a 3-pack?
I like that. And I think the
maybe
two,
one, maybe two, maybe all 3 take a jump.
I think eyes from training camp are really going to be, again, on the receiver battle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's easier to see. I think when it comes to the offensive line, people will be able to see some things, but then they'll have to rely on, things other people are seeing, mainly me. And I try and give them the best look that I can at that offensive line and what's going on with it. But I think most people want to see, and I think when Jalen Noel was drafted, I think initially a lot of people were like, oh, that's it for Mechie. You went and got Christian Kirk. Now you got Noel. We've seen plenty of situations over the years where you felt like they drafted a guy at this position. Okay, this guy's done. He's, this isn't going to happen. And then all of a sudden there's some injuries or some things happen. And that guy that you were not supposed to forget about turns into the guy that ends up being the guy for that position. And that can happen. And look, once, we obviously know the story of Mechie missing year 1. And then year 2's kind of still shaking off the rust. Last year there were some moments, I felt like in the playoff game, there were some moments where he made some big catches on 3rd down. There's that long drive that got us within 1, should have tied the game, but got us within 1. And both he and Hutch made a number of big catches. And I just feel like year 3, and I'm glad you said it, because it really is year 3 for both of them, if we're being honest. It's that can be a year where you start to figure a few things out. You've got your routine down. You obviously have to learn a new offense. Everybody's got to learn a new offense, but the faster you can learn it, the faster you can play.
And it might benefit their skill sets better.
That's exactly right.
It might accentuate those skill sets, what they do.
That's right. And look, we've gone through this before. Last year, just take, we had the big 3. Everybody's excited about the big 3, right? Nico missed 5 games.
Yep. Injuries happen.
Tank got hurt in December, missed the rest of the year, and missed this year more than likely. And Diggs got hurt week 8.
Yeah.
So that receiver room has not been allergic to injury. I wish they would be.
Been unlucky. Yeah.
They've been unlucky in a sense. And hopefully you're building a group there that can withstand an injury for a few weeks. But look, if somebody gets hurt for the whole season, okay, how layered is this group to be able to handle an injury where they can step in and do things if Nico were to get hurt? Okay, what more does Christian have to do? What more does Mechie have to do? What more does Hutch have to do? What more do the rookies have to do? And I think that's what's going to make this thing, pretty interesting. And I'll give you a guy not to forget about, and I think it's really easy, because when we talk, when the draft happened and it went Higgins for second round and then Noel third round, I think a lot of people were like, oh, Mechie Hutchinson. That was the first thing they thought of. I remember thinking, I like those two coming in, but don't forget about Justin Watson.
Yeah.
Justin Watson with the Chiefs.
Time out. This was a move, Watson, that happens within a flurry of other free agent moves going on. That I think there's a large segment of the fan base that is like, who's what? Justin Watson?
Forgot we even had him, or even like, who is he?
This guy's been productive, in the role he's been asked to fill in his time in the NFL.
He was a guy that with Kansas City, I felt like Patrick Mahomes would go to. Like I remember long time ago when I was playing, and I remember my quarterback saying to me, look, I'm throwing you the ball. Like, he trusted that I was going to be that guy no matter where I was. I'm throwing you the ball. Even if the route really wasn't for me, he was like, I'm throwing you the ball because I know you're going to catch it, and we're going to make a play. I feel like that was the way Patrick Mahomes was with Justin Watson. When all the other flashy receivers with the Chiefs would drop a pass, run the wrong route, it was Justin Watson who sort of settled everything down. Now, he's also an Ivy Leaguer, so I'm good with that. He went to Penn, which borders on non-Ivy, but
why is that? Why? How come?
I'm just joking, because we always joked about Penn being the one that was kind of always taking the guys that had the SATs that were lower than everybody else. That's an inside Ivy League joke. Oh, they're good. It was always, they're really good because they take the guys to all the low SAT scores so they get better at it. So that was always the joke that we went with. But I saw him walk in the hallway the other day, and I'm like, he's put together well. He's 6'3", 6'4", big wide receiver, can be a deep downfield threat. Do not forget about that guy. I think a lot of people have talked about Braxton Berrios enough, the Alex Earl connection, all that. But anyways, I think a lot of people talk about Berrios. Oh, he could be a returner, punt returns, whatever. So I think there's been talk about him, and then obviously the rookies, everybody gets excited about them. And because of the rookies, we mentioned, hey, don't forget about Mechie and X. And I think that's on everybody's, hit list.
Good guy to remember, yeah.
But Justin Watson, to me, at wide receiver, is a guy where don't forget about that dude, because the numbers may not be obscene. They may not even be like, oh, third, fourth wide receiver, whatever. But it's like when he would make those catches, the opportunities that he was given, he would maximize.
Chiefs loved him. He was one of those guys that he signs here, and their social media crew has a thank you, Justin. So not everybody gets those thank you so-and-so messages. So that's a nice little add.
Yes, exactly.
Time to segue into something different.
Okay.
I know you're a fan of this. I'm a fan of this guy. Toro.
Oh.
What? The mascot? Yeah.
Toro, yes. Mascot. Toro.
So listen, Toro has been nominated for the Mascot Hall of Fame. He got really, really close a year or so. It's an injustice. Like Andre Johnson was not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's so close.
Toro belongs and deserves to be in the Mascot Hall of Fame. So being recognized for his outstanding performance and dedication to the Texans and our community. He's not in yet. That's where you come into play. There's 28 nominees representing 11 major league teams, 5 minor league teams, 12 collegiate teams from all over, not just the NFL, all sorts of sports. So go to mascothalloffame.com. You can vote once per day from now until May 24th. Get Toro in the Hall of Fame. It's not going to be out until it gets with the group once. Anyways, just go to Mascot Hall of Fame and start voting when you can.
Yes.
But I want to talk about
get Toro in the Hall of Fame.
There's 2 main reasons he's going in. What he does as a mascot, which is hilarious, acrobatic, and awesome on game days,
so fun.
And so far on
entertaining.
But really more so, the guy is an animal, no pun intended, an animal in the community.
Yes.
I mean, makes a
Huge.
massive, massive dent in a positive way, whether it's fighting bullying, whether it's getting kids ready for the STAR test, and then just going around and supporting all the community initiatives that the Texans have done over the years. But the thing that sticks out to me the most that I tell people whenever they ask about Toro is when the Texans played in London in 2019, the team got there on Friday and practiced that afternoon.
Yes.
Toro and the cheerleaders and some other traveling folks, they got there on Thursday, the day before, and did some things. I got there with our videographer, editor, producer, Tyler Suddarth. We got there Tuesday because we had to kind of set the scene.
That's right.
So we landed on Tuesday afternoon, shooting stuff at 3 p.m. on the Thames River. All day Wednesday, we're doing stuff. All day Thursday, we're doing stuff. And then Friday comes, and we link up with Toro and the cheerleaders. And by this point, I'm kind of fried. I'm a little bit jet lagged, but we're sitting on a bus. It's a rainy London day. And I'm in one seat. And behind me, it's Toro and the other guy who does or did a lot of his social media, all sorts of things, not just social media. They basically are a 2-man team. And I was amazed at the fog I'm in. I'm listening to them planning, okay, we're going to do this shot here, and we'll be able to use it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But then we'll reuse it St. Patrick's Day for this. We're going to do this shot today at 3, and we'll double it up for Christmas and for Valentine's. This shot tomorrow, we're going to use when the comet comes through 6 years from now, and we'll have I was stunned at the planning, the preparation, the foresight, the thoughtfulness that these guys have just with what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. But they go out in the community. They do so many good things. They're Hall of Famers in my book. Put Toro in the Mascot Hall of Fame. What's your Toro? I know you got a zillion Toro stories.
Yeah.
What's your Toro story? Why you think he belongs?
It's funny you said that because as you started down that way, I was a little disappointed because that was kind of where I was thinking that his impact in the community with kids, in particular,
huge.
Like when he goes to schools, it's incredible. I mean, I think about that as a kid. I mean, I grew up in Richmond, Rosenberg, and we didn't have Toro. I don't even know.
Oilers didn't have a mascot, did they?
Yeah, I don't think so.
They had the guy who wore the silver helmet, but he wasn't.
He wasn't really a mascot.
Yeah, he was awesome, but
I remember, had I been a kid, 3rd, 4th grade, and I wasn't even here in Houston at that point, but had I been a kid, mascot comes in and it's reading for the STAR test. Like that would have been so cool for me as a little kid, that memory. And yeah, you grow up and you're like, yeah, mascot, whatever. But it is really cool. And I see him at practice. The players are coming down and they're all screaming for autographs. And then invariably you hear people, Toro.
Oh, I got one. Yeah.
They want Toro to come take a picture, and he obliges every single one. And when you really think about it, yeah, it's professional sports, it's entertainment. We're in the memory business. We're in the business of creating memories for people that they have forever. You talk to people. I had somebody last year that Miranda, she is the daughter of somebody who owns a little bakery over in Heights that I'd love to go to. Give them a shout out. Angela's Oven. They're incredible. And I was going there, and finally one day, because I've been in there so often, she started talking to me. You got to be friends. And she mentioned she had never been to a game before. And so I said, well, hey, I'll give you my tickets. I said, what are you doing Sunday night? Can you get off work on Sunday? And they're like, well, yeah, we're usually out of here by noon. And I said, well, how about Lions Sunday night here? She's like, oh my God, that would be incredible. And I gave her the tickets in my seats, and Toro came by, said, hey, it's just like everything that she talked about was like this great grand memory. And that's what Toro does. He is the individual that's providing those memories for all these people, for all these little kids, for adults. I mean, you think about parents that, are there with their kids and the smile on their face just lighting up. And Toro's also an author. How many mascots going into the Hall of Fame have written a damn book?
Written a book.
Yeah, not many. Not many.
2 years ago, training camp. So it was Stroud and Will Anderson's rookie year. One of my boys' best friends. So I have a 5th grader and a 3rd grader. This kid's a 4th grader, their friend.
Yeah.
They played sports together. This kid knows his sports like the boys.
Yeah.
Big Texans fan. He was out at training camp, and he was getting autographs. And his dad, one of my friends, texted me later that day, and he said, he's so pumped. He got his shoe signed by Toro. ... And CJ Stroud. The kid loved that his shoe got signed by CJ Stroud, but he was equally, if not more, pumped that Toro signed his shoe.
Yeah,
and you know what? You've done a zillion events and appearances over the years with the organization where Toro was with you.
Yeah.
So have I. A lot of times the kids know who the player is that is at the event, and you get a range of guys. You get frontline quarterbacks sometimes. Sometimes you get guys who are further down the roster.
Sure.
Play different positions in quarterback. They always, the kids, whether it's a boy or a girl, regardless of age, they always know who Toro is.
Yes.
They don't always know who the player is.
Right.
They don't know who I am.
Right.
Always.
They know Toro.
Who Toro is.
Absolutely.
And they go bananas. And it's always so much fun. And I just try to whip the kids into a frenzy when I do the
Toro does all the heavy lifting.
Like ramp up the screaming. I'm sure the speakers are like, so
exactly.
But anyways, Mascot Hall of Fame.
Put him in.
Let me make sure I get the website correct, because we got to get this. Yeah, mascothalloffame.com. Please vote once per day for our guy Toro. Get him in.
Toro.
He belongs. He belongs. As Andre Johnson belonged in the Hall of Fame, so too does Toro. Okay, John, good to be with you. We will do this again next week, and we'll be talking about OTAs, rookie minicamp, and all those other fun things. Cool?
Very cool.